Good afternoon, this is Atmospheric Alex here with yet another severe weather outlook and discussion video. It just does not seem to stop. This active pattern we've been in has just been awful out there. Take a look at yesterday here, out across the southeast, massive line of storms moved on through. You can take a look at that there. Big old bow echo of storms came from Oklahoma, and look at that, very intense. Did basically nothing by me, as per usual, but, you know, for other people, got actually up to 80 to even 90 mile-an-hour winds. So we've got quite a lot to talk about in today's video, especially for everything that's going to be going on today. We have a level 4 out of 5 moderate risk for severe weather in place for today, for potentially a massive derecho that could sweep across Texas, Oklahoma, even going into portions of Louisiana potentially going into tonight. But yeah, we're talking about this here. It's large moderate risk here for, areas like Dallas, Wichita Falls and that, Lawton, Oklahoma. Some pretty familiar areas there that keep getting hammered by severe weather this year. Now, as we go over to our tornado outlook first for everything else, we do have a large 5% risk for tornadoes. There will likely be a hatched risk of tornadoes, somewhere maybe up at here. If we do see our storms fire discrete, if we see individual supercells form before, it clusters into a gigantic bowing line, that is when we could see a strong, maybe even an intense tornado risk. So we're going to have to be on high alert for that. And of course, down the line, there will be a lot of spin-up tornadoes as well that could be expected. And here you go for your wind risk here. Wow, we are talking about a 30 to 45 hatched wind risk here. This is going to be quite a significant event here. We're talking about winds upwards of 80 to 100 miles per hour. Later this evening into the overnight hours, we could even see a stray gust nearing 110 in some of your most intense wind segments. This is going to be quite the event to watch unfold on radar, and for storm chasers, this will be quite insane as well. And our hail risk, we do have a large 30 hatched hail risk, unfortunately for 4 to 5 inch diameter hail. We're talking about a high-end wind event and a high-end hail event as well today. This is going to be definitely one of the most intense severe weather outbreaks I've seen in a while for the plains. Just overall an all hazards event here is going to be pretty memorable for sure. What else about today? Well, we're also seeing a slight risk for severe weather out here for Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, into Virginia, and Washington, D.C. as well, getting in on it. We are going to be talking about, it looks to be a tornado risk, especially near the D.C. area here. We do have a 2 to even a 5% chance of tornadoes within 25 miles of a given point. That's something we're really going to need to watch out for later on this evening, as it could be quite a sleeper risk, meaning, everyone's going to be covering all the havoc back in the plains, and they may forget about the stuff back up here in the mid-Atlantic. This could really sneak up on people. So again, turn on emergency alerts on your phone and crank your weather radios on high so you can be informed in those areas as well. Your wind risk, just a large 15%, and then your hail risk, just a small 15%, so nothing too much to write home about there. It's mainly a tornado risk. For tomorrow, we have an extremely large slight risk of severe weather. I guess it just never ends, right? Look at that here. Pennsylvania, Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, Tennessee, into Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. We're going to be talking about wind, hail, and possibly even some tornadic activity as well. As you can see here, not much of a tornado risk, just 2% risks, very broad 2% risks. Some wind is definitely going to be there as well, and maybe not as much hail. We'll see if any upgrades occur in the future for that, but definitely a wild one out there tomorrow. Not nearly as bad as today, though, thank goodness. Okay, now, do you want to see absolute chaos? Well, we're going to look at our HRRR model. This is going to be what the radar could look like later on this afternoon into the evening. And we're going to start off here with some storms that could be firing up here into the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma, starting in and around really 1 to 4 p.m. Central Time. And we will have to see how discrete these supercells can remain, or potential, again, strong to intense tornado risk. And yeah, you could definitely see some of those cells there further south near Amarillo, that is definitely a very good environment that those cells will be in, and even stuff in Oklahoma. So we'll start off as definitely a tornado risk for sure in those areas. But you can already see it growing upscale, becoming a lot more linear going into 5 to 8 p.m. Central, and then look at that there. But you still do have a couple supercells ahead of your main line that are really going to need to be watched out for. So tornado risk is increasing for today. Believe it or not, originally it wasn't supposed to be much of a threat, but we're starting to see that increase. But look at this gigantic cluster of just messy, severe thunderstorms here, capable of extremely intense downbursts and microburst activity, resulting in over 80-mile-an-hour winds for a pretty large area here in those supercells. We're going to have to watch that really begin around 8 p.m. Central tonight, and it's going to continue. Look at this Boeing segment right there. Yeah, this is the type of stuff that could bring up to 100-mile-an-hour destructive winds. And I really do expect this to peak probably around 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. tonight Central Time. And you could even see also your large hail risk. Look at your white colors in there. Really white. That is going to be for sure some very large, even destructive hail. I'm sorry I'm using that word so much, but it's going to be a big day out there. Look at that going straight through the DFW area with 80 to 90 plus mile an hour winds later on tonight. Really got to hope that this is a little further to the west or to the east or just doesn't happen at all, because this would be a very dangerous situation for the metro area. Perhaps even an extremely dangerous situation warning could get issued, and just, my goodness, creams right through the Dallas area. And let's take a closer look at that here with a really zoomed in view. This is going to be hour by hour. This is by 11, 12, and yeah, there it is right there. Very intense Boeing segment there, slamming straight through Dallas. Yeah, that would definitely be a very dangerous situation for sure. And that just continues on through. And how about your wind gust forecast? I think we should look at this. This is going to be hour by hour accumulated over time. You can see your storms really begin to ramp up here. Like I said, already talking about gusts upwards of even 80 to 90 miles an hour starting around 8 p.m. Central tonight. Again, 8 to 1. That is when I do expect your peak to be. And some of these gusts in here, if you look at your maximum up here, almost 100 miles an hour. Very just ridiculous wind event, just to say the least here. And that continues on through, especially around DFW. We're about to zoom into that here. And yeah, I mean, right here, look at that. So about 60 to 80 mile an hour winds going straight through Dallas. That is going to be a big issue later on tonight. How about for the rest of Texas here? Again, very textbook look to this derecho here that could be possible. You can see this line does continue further on off to the east here, bringing upwards of 60 to 80 mile an hour winds possibly, and maybe weakening closer to 60 to 70 blowing through Lufkin, Shreveport, Texarkana here, going into around 2 to 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. So certainly going to be quite the loud and really dangerous night ahead for a lot of people. Let's continue on through Louisiana. This really weakens fast going into tomorrow morning, and we really begin to lose our severe weather going into Mississippi, and poof, it is all said and done by early afternoon. Now, one thing that could play a role in our wind gusts is our storm energy. We're going to look at this really quick because this is a little more of an accurate tool. But you could definitely see this is probably already underperforming. The models tend to do this. Upwards of 3,000 to 4,000 Cape aka storm energy across those areas. But you can see here, as we go later on into the afternoon, your temperatures are going to warm significantly, and some rapid drying is possible here across Oklahoma. You can see we have Cape decreasing down to 3 to even 2,000, and potentially even closing in on 1,000 here going into the evening. This would actually limit your wind risk just a little bit. Still 80 to 90 mile an hour winds are likely, but this could prevent 100 mile an hour winds from developing. And if we do not see this overmixing occur, if this does not occur here, then our ceiling could be a little bit higher for how destructive these winds could get. So this is something we need to be watching in a real-time analysis. Mesoscale analysis is going to be showing this very well, and my eyes will be glued on that throughout the entire day. But you can see definitely going to be losing a little bit of Cape here. That is something to really watch. But to the south, upwards of 5,000 joules per kilogram of storm energy. That is definitely going to be quite explosive there. Will result in your destructive winds really intensifying over time. How about our other risk area? What's it looking like? Well, we could see some scattered strong to severe storms developing later on this afternoon. Look at down here near Charleston, South Carolina, right off the coast, really exploding there in development. And if we look further north into North Carolina, you could see a couple of supercells try to get going around Hickory, Charlotte, and Raleigh there. Further up north into Virginia, you definitely see some of those supercells as well becoming underway. But look at that, definitely some more severe weather across eastern North Carolina going into around 5 to 9 p.m. this evening. And even another round, we're just going to be seeing these pop-up thunderstorms here. They're going to quickly develop and go severe. So you really got to watch out. You definitely won't be seeing one round. You could be seeing up to 3 into this evening, into the overnight hours. Definitely going to be mindful of that. As we flop further up north here, you can see your supercells again becoming organized here, getting into the West Virginia and the Maryland areas here. Something to really watch. And these actually start to turn right a little bit. So this right here begins to do something like this and really can show a lot more intensity here. So that's your tornado risk going into Washington, D.C. Looks to get a little more linear as we go into around 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern tonight, and really maybe not as high as a tornado risk across D.C., but areas out to the west here, definitely going to be watching out closely for supercell growth and development for your tornado risk. What do your parameters look like for today? Really low overall. But as we go later on to the day, definitely can see some yellow colors up here, and maybe even a couple speckles of orange there. Again, nothing too off the walls, but look at that little orange area there, going near DC, just south of DC, it looks like. That could definitely be your tornado risk, and another one down here in eastern North Carolina. How about as we go into tomorrow, because there's a lot of areas to cover, unfortunately. It's a lower risk, but there's just a lot more people being impacted. You can see a morning round of storms for southern Alabama into southern Georgia into the panhandle of Florida here that's going to be moving through. And then some other activity, going into the afternoon, your severe weather really begins to fire up here across Mississippi, Alabama here. Some strong to severe scattered storms, and even a couple supercells cannot be ruled out, with damaging winds, even some hail, and maybe a tornado risk. And then even across Georgia, there's some stuff there. Models will be very inaccurate for tomorrow. I need to preface that. This is going to be a summer-like pop-up storm day tomorrow. And again, with the amount of storms that could form, the amount of, boundaries being emitted from the storms due to cooler air and stuff like that, it's just going to be very hard to predict. But maybe more of your, consolidated complexes like this may end up occurring. Look at near Birmingham, Montgomery, going into around 4 to 8 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. And then heading further off to your east, a couple more things occur there. This definitely would be a major damaging wind risk. I, again, don't know if that's going to verify, but very nice Boeing structure there. Even a vortex, like a meso-low forming on your north side. So definitely would pump out a ton of wind with that. It would be a surprise significant wind risk for those areas. I don't expect that to happen, but we'll keep an eye on the forecast. Going further off to the south, this really begins to organize as well, and you just see this really blowing on across the southeast here, producing damaging winds for sure. You're going to see the remnants of your major derecho that could occur tonight. This is going to cause a lot of storm energy, coming out in front of it here in this general area here. And well, look at that. You do have storm development, severe storm development across the plateau here of middle to east Tennessee. And then even up into Kentucky, we have another area of a lot of storm activity. There is no way to tell exactly what's going to happen, but it does look like a decent line of storms will be setting up here across these areas and will be skirting off to the north and east, kind of like this, along an area. Flash flooding could be a concern due to training thunderstorm activity. And again, damaging winds, some hail is definitely going to be a possibility here. And it looks like East Tennessee should miss the worst of it. This should really begin to weaken. And I do expect your activity to stay really upwards here in northeastern Tennessee into eastern Kentucky for the most part. But areas south of I-40 here in East Tennessee might miss out yet again. I know, right? You didn't get anything yesterday. You might not get anything tomorrow as well. But again, things can and will change for sure as we go through time. And of course, again, going across, the Carolinas, again, it felt like we were just doing this, right? Some severe weather is possible. Timings are very uncertain here, But like I said, linear segments could form along here and could be a little more certain. Charlotte, Columbia here, Augusta could be getting hit around midnight tomorrow night. Not a forecast, but certainly a possibility. Further north into Ohio here into Pennsylvania, severe storms become underway at around 12 to 3 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. And they really just continue. Look at that hail core right over Pittsburgh. Not a forecast, but certainly gonna need to watch stuff like that. And then overnight, you see a boundary interaction, more storms firing. Will they be severe? Well, I guess we'll have to find out due to forecast uncertainties. What is your environment like for tomorrow? Well, definitely a bit elevated here. Look at this. Some of your orange and red colors, even a couple hot pinks in there. For sure going to be seeing some supercells and severe weather across the southeast. Some wind shear trying to flare up as well, so an embedded tornado risk is definitely possible for tomorrow evening. And then going on further east, very low parameters. We're not talking about much there. Same song and dance further up to the north, just bleh, not much, right? Grays, greens, some light greens. Yeah, you're really grasping for straws here with your severe risk. And now, of course, we can't leave the video there. If you saw in the thumbnail, I put a little area in the Gulf and it said hype on it, right? Well, let me tell you why, all right? I am not expecting any tropical development over the Caribbean or into the Gulf in the next probably 2 weeks. All right, I think I can confidently say that. We're going to take a look at our GEFS ensemble, and you can see here, look at that, a lot of ensemble agreement going up into the Gulf, right? And even this other track here going into the Bay of Campeche there, and even into the Gulf as well. And you're probably thinking, well, Alex, there's definitely a chance, right? You could see some of your members here are indicating possible development, even a couple hurricanes in there. You're thinking, yeah, that's definitely a possibility, right? That's what you should be saying if the GFS didn't have a major bias to it. This is your European ensemble. What happened? Why are we going into the East Pacific? Also, look at all of this insane agreement here in the Eastern Pacific, right? Well, let me tell you why. We have a strong high pressure system up here. Any storms that maybe form in this general area here are going to be bullied right off to the west here into Central America. Again, you're not going to see anything lifting north because of your high pressure. And you can see your extension of your high pressure right within here as well. So you're not going to see stuff go off to the north. It's not going to happen in this particular pattern. And also, why is there a lot less spin down here? Well, the GFS model in particular likes to cause a lot more vorticity, a lot more spin off of anything that comes off of South America here. Any amount of spin right there begins to rapidly intensify on that model as it shows too much thunderstorm activity, which consolidates an area of lower pressure way too rapidly. Okay? This is important. As we look at our GFS model run, this is going to be from this morning, you're going to begin to see something very weird occur here. Look at your area of vorticity, all right, coming off of South America here, diving into the Caribbean, and rapidly intensifying, moving on off to the north. Look at that. Big ol' impact there to Cancun, possibly. And look at into the Gulf, rapid intensification. Again, let me reiterate, this is not going to happen. It's just not. How do I know this? Again, I was talking about your high pressure system over the Atlantic is going to push storms like this. All right? It's going to do it like that. Also, you have more favorable ingredients in the Eastern Pacific right now, which means storms will naturally want to go over there. Right? Want to go west. And so you may be thinking, well, this storm doesn't form that far out. Look at this. That's only a week from now, less than a week from now, in fact. And you would be correct. What if I told you this? According to the GFS, we were supposed to have a tropical depression today. Right as I am recording this video, there was supposed to be a tropical depression in the Caribbean moving north like this into the Gulf, probably intensifying to a fantasy hurricane, whatever it does, you know. We don't have this right now. This is not real. This is fake. This does not exist right now. But unfortunately, a lot of people online have been making some rather interesting thumbnails lately, saying that there is a chance for tropical development. Actually, they're even saying it's likely going to happen. And, you know, they have these hurricane icons, you know, in the Caribbean into the Gulf and stuff like that. Guys, don't believe them. All right, I'm sorry. And a lot of other weather YouTubers have talked about this as well, so I'm not the only one who's going to have to say this. There unfortunately only looking for clicks and attention at this time of year. All right? I know it's sad, but that's just kind of the harsh reality of it all. And what they're doing, and they don't realize this, is there may be people with severe storm anxiety, say living along the Gulf Coast here, where they have their big hurricane icons going towards like this. What do you think those people are thinking, right, when they see that thumbnail? Well, they're probably panicking a bit. There's probably people along here that have PTSD from major hurricane impacts. They're probably freaking out right now. All right? And for the people who aren't over there, who want to take a vacation down there, well, they may not be able to take that vacation anymore. Well, because this person said there was a chance of a hurricane in the Gulf in the next 15 days, when there really isn't. All right? Stop believing the GFS model. It is completely wrong. Completely wrong. That's what I wanted to say there. So the next time you see someone online promoting a very inaccurate model, please just don't trust them. I'm sorry. You need to wait for the National Hurricane Center to issue their area of interest. And at that point, you could really start tracking it. Look at the European model. Not even showing much rain going into the Gulf. It's like very dry, actually. That's crazy. There's not even a tropical wave in sight on that model. Well, because it's more accurate, right? It doesn't have that bias. It doesn't have this crazy thing spinning off of South America and going north, right? Please, trust the European model. It is very accurate for a reason, all right? That is the reason why. And that being said, thank you all so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Apologize if it was a bit long. I just had to mention that at the end there. It has been really bothering me over the past couple of weeks. Again, for the past probably 150 model runs, the GFS has been showing a hurricane in the Gulf. And it's the only one that has, and it is the most inaccurate model to trust. So please do not believe it. All right, stay safe, everyone. We're expecting, like I said, big time derecho potential today across the plains. Stay extremely weather aware, as you could see over 100-mile-an-hour winds out there later on this evening into the overnight hours. Okay, have a wonderful night, everyone, and stay extremely weather aware. Turn on emergency alerts on your phone and crank your weather radios on high.